The boy's voice trembled as he spoke, barely louder than the wind brushing against the tall grass of the ranch. His clothes were torn, his shoes worn thin, and his eyes carried a fear no child should ever know. He stood in front of the old rancher, holding the hand of a little girl who couldn't have been more than 6. She clutched a small cloth doll, its button eye missing, and pressed herself behind her brother's leg as if the world itself were hunting her. "Sir, if they come, hide my sister," the boy begged. The rancher looked down at them, his weathered face unreadable. He had lived a long life on this land, seen droughts that cracked the earth and storms that tore roofs from barns. He had buried friends, lost family, and learned that silence often spoke louder than words. But something in the boy's voice cut through him sharper than any storm. He didn't ask who they were. He didn't ask where the children had come from or what trouble followed them. He only knelt, bringing himself eye level with the boy, and placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "I won't hide her," he said calmly. "No one can touch her." The boy blinked, confused. He had expected secrecy, maybe a dark cellar or a hidden room. Instead, the rancher stood up straight, his back rigid with a quiet authority that felt immovable. That was how it began. The children's names were Adam and Lily. They had walked for nearly 2 days, following rumors whispered by strangers and half-forgotten directions given by a kind woman at a bus stop. Their parents were gone, taken by a cruel twist of fate that Adam still couldn't bring himself to speak aloud. What mattered was that Lily was all he had left, and somewhere behind them were men who believed she belonged to them. The rancher's name was Samuel Crow. Most people in the nearby town called him Old Sam, sometimes with affection, sometimes with caution. He owned hundreds of acres of land, cattle that grazed freely, and a reputation for being fair but unyielding. He wasn't a man who raised his voice often, but when he did, people listened. Samuel led the children into his house without ceremony. It wasn't a grand place, but it was sturdy, built with hands that believed in doing things once and doing them right. He set food on the table, warm stew, fresh bread, and watched as Adam tried to let Lily eat first, pretending he wasn't starving himself. "You're safe here," Samuel said, pouring them water. "Both of you." Adam nodded, though his eyes kept darting toward the windows, measuring exits, listening for footsteps that weren't there. That night, Lily slept for the first time in days without crying. Adam stayed awake, sitting in a chair by her bed, waiting for the sound of engines or angry voices. None came, just the low hum of insects and the distant call of an owl. Morning brought sunlight spilling over open fields and the smell of coffee. Samuel was already up, mending a fence as if nothing in the world had changed. When Adam stepped outside, the rancher handed him a pair of gloves without a word. "Work helps settle the mind," Samuel said. Adam worked harder than he ever had. He repaired fences, fed cattle, hauled water, and followed Samuel's quiet instructions. Lily stayed near the house, drawing pictures in the dirt and slowly learning to smile again. Days turned into weeks. But fear doesn't disappear just because the sun keeps rising. One afternoon, a black SUV appeared at the edge of the property. Adam froze. His heart hammered so hard he thought Samuel might hear it from across the field. Lily dropped her doll and ran toward her brother, panic flooding her small face. "They're here," Adam whispered. "Please hide her." Samuel wiped his hands on a cloth and looked toward the vehicle. He didn't rush. He didn't panic. He walked, slow, deliberate, toward the gate. "No," he said firmly. "Stay where you are." The SUV stopped. 2 men stepped out, their posture aggressive, their eyes scanning the land like they owned it already. They walked toward Samuel with the kind of confidence that came from knowing people usually stepped aside. "We're looking for a girl," one of them said. "Came this way. Blonde. About this tall." Samuel didn't move. "You're on private property," he replied. "Turn around." The men laughed. "Old man, you don't know who you're dealing with." Samuel's gaze hardened, sharp as barbed wire. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with. And you need to leave." One of the men glanced past him, spotting Adam and Lily near the house. His smile was thin and dangerous. "There she is." Samuel stepped forward, blocking the view with his body. "No one can touch her," he said, his voice low but unshakable. The air felt heavy, like the moment before a storm breaks. Adam's legs felt weak. He wanted to scream, to grab Lily and run, but Samuel stood there like the land itself had risen to protect them. You're making a mistake, the man warned. Samuel smiled then, not warmly, but with a confidence that came from knowing the law, the land, and himself. Son, this land has cameras, neighbors with rifles, and a sheriff who owes me favors. You have about 10 seconds to decide if today's the day your life gets complicated. The men hesitated. Samuel didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten violence. He simply stood, unmovable, like an old oak tree that had survived 100 storms. They left. The SUV turned around, dust rising behind it as it disappeared down the road. Adam collapsed onto the ground, shaking. Lily clung to him, sobbing with relief. Samuel walked back, placed a hand on Adam's head, and said quietly, I told you. No one can touch her. After that day, something shifted. Adam stopped living in constant fear. Lily laughed more. She helped Samuel feed the chickens and called him Grandpa Sam, without realizing the weight of the word. Samuel didn't correct her. But safety didn't mean forgetting the past. One evening, Adam finally told Samuel everything. About the debt their parents had fallen into. About the men who believed Lily was leverage. About the threats that had chased them across towns and highways. Samuel listened without interruption, his jaw tight. When Adam finished, he whispered, I'm sorry. I brought trouble to your door. Samuel shook his head. Trouble exists whether we invite it or not. What matters is what we do when it shows up. He made calls the next day. Old contacts. People who respected him. The law moved slowly, but it moved. Investigations started. Names were written down. The shadow that followed the children began to shrink. Months passed. Lily started school in town. Adam worked on the ranch full-time, saving money, learning skills he never thought he'd have. Samuel watched them grow, filling a quiet space in his life he hadn't known was empty. One night, as they sat on the porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Adam spoke softly. Why did you help us? Samuel took a long breath. Because once, a long time ago, someone helped me when I had nothing. And because the world doesn't change when we hide the innocent. It changes when we stand in front of them. Adam nodded, tears welling in his eyes. Years later, people in town would tell the story differently. They'd say Samuel Crow scared off criminals with nothing but his stare. They'd say the ranch was protected by more than fences and cattle. They'd say no harm ever crossed that land again. But Adam knew the truth. It wasn't about fear. It was about courage. It was about a rancher who refused to hide a child and chose instead to stand between danger and innocence, saying with quiet certainty, no one can touch her. And because of that choice, 2 broken children found a home, a future, and proof that even in a harsh world, there are still people who will stand their ground for what's right.